registration, licensure, and practice of physical therapy and operating funds therefore, Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Civil and Finance.
1644, reducing wastage by donating and recycling excess edible food, Senator Estrada.
The Committees on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform, Social Justice.
1645, providing for the publication of laws in the print or online version of the official gazette and of a newspaper of general circulation, Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Public Information, Mass Media.
1646, providing for development and modernization fund for the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines to ensure upgrades to standards, systems, and procedures prescribed for civil aviation practices and for other purposes, Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Public Services.
1647, instituting a medical reserve corps and appointing funds therefore, Senator Legarda.
Committee on Health and Demography and Finance.
1648, providing for benefits and privileges to unpaid care workers and their families, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Legarda.
To the Committee on Social Justice, Ways and Means of Finance.
1649, defining the maritime zones under the jurisdiction of the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Legarda.
Committee on Foreign Relations, National Defense and Security.
1650, providing for a system of redistributing and recycling food waste to promote food security, Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Agriculture, Food, Social Justice, and Ways and Means.
1651, rationalizing the celebration of national holidays, amending for the purpose RA 9492, Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Code.
1652, establishing evacuation centers in every city and municipality and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Tulfo.
To the Committees on National Defense, Public Works, and Finance.
1653, strengthening the Legal Education Board, thereby amending RA 7662 and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Higher Education, Technical Vocational Education, Justice, Human Rights, Ways and Means of Finance.
1654, strengthening the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, amending for the purpose RA 9497 by Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Public Services.
1655, maintaining and preserving Filipino films, creating the Philippine Film Archive, approving funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Revilla Jr.
Committees on Public Information, Mass Media, Culture and Arts, and Finance.
1656, an act to designate September as Philippine Film Industry Month and mandate the Film Development Council of the Philippines to conduct events on various film-related disciplines during the celebration, to appropriate funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on Public Information, Mass Media, and Finance.
1657, institutionalizing industry cluster-based programs and projects through interlocal cooperation and people's participation, Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committees on Trade and Commerce, Local Government, Ways and Means.
1658, creating the Office of Tanod Bata and providing funds therefore, Senator Revilla Jr.
To the Committee on Women and Children and Gender Equality and Finance.
1659, creating the Trabaho sa Oras ng Pagbangon program, appropriating funds therefore for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Labor and Employment, Civil Service, and Finance.
1660, an act fulfilling the emancipation of agrarian reform beneficiaries from the debt burden through the subrogation by the national government of agrarian reform beneficiaries under the voluntary land transfer and direct payment schemes, and the assumption of their debts thereunder to appropriate funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
Committees on Agriculture, Food, and Finance.
1661, an act fulfilling the emancipation of agrarian reform beneficiaries from the debt burden through the free award of agricultural lands under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Finance.
Committee reports, Committee Report number 18 by the Committee on Higher Technical and Vocational Education on House number 4635, introduced by Representative Adyong et al. An act extending the term of office of the President of the Adyong Memorial State College from 3 years to 4 years, in accordance with RA 8292, otherwise known as the Higher Education Modernization Act of 1997, amending for the purpose RA 8651, as amended and appointing funds therefore, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Escudero.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee Report number 19 by the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations on PS Resolution number 120, introduced by Senator Pimentel III, entitled Resolution directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged overpriced and outdated laptops procured by the DepEd through the Department of Budget Procurement Service, DBMPS, and PS Resolution number 134 by Senator Cayetano AP, Directing the Senate Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigation to conduct an inquiry on the procurement by the DepEd through the procurement service of the DBM of laptops for teachers for use in distance learning, recommending the approval of the committee report, sponsor Senator Tolentino.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 250, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution numbers 252, 283, 312, and 424, and for the Secretary to read the title of the measure. This is the resolution commending the outstanding women in the nation's service 2022 awardees.
There being no objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader, motion is approved. We ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Resolution honoring and commending the outstanding women in nation service towns 2022 awardees.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Aurora, our colleague Senator Sani Angara, to deliver his sponsorship speech. So moves, President.
Our distinguished colleague from the great province of Aurora, who wishes to make Baler the surfing capital of the Philippines, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader, distinguished colleagues. Again, Happy New Year to all of us and greetings to our birthday celebrants, Mr. President. Mr. President, we proudly join our colleagues standing today in this August chamber to recognize the 11 women chosen in the search for the outstanding women in the nation's service, or the Towns Awards. Women have long played an outsized and singularly vital role in our society, from the pre-colonial matriarchal days of the Babaylans to the various revolutions our people have waged against repression and injustice, up to today as the Philippines continues to be a world leader for gender equality and women empowerment. However, despite this long history, many Filipinas continue to face struggle. Their voices go unheard, their dignity diminished, and their wisdom and experience marginalized from the wider public narrative. There remain several ways that women can be further empowered and for their contributions to the betterment of our society to be more widely recognized. That is why in our early days as a legislator, back in the House of Representatives, we authored the Magna Carta for Women, or Republic Act 9710, which further enshrines the critical role women play in nation building, ensures the substantive equality between all genders, and establishes the broad legal framework that upholds and safeguards the rights of women. This is also why we speak today, to sing praises and admiration for our town's awardees. Kahanga-hanga po, Mr. President, ang mga awardees natin ngayon. Iba-iba man ang kanilang mga larangan at propesyon, lahat sila ay may malaking naiambag para sa ikabubuti at ikaunlad ng ating lipunan. Ang 2022 Towns Awardees ay sina Dr. Annie Rosa Almario ng Adarna House at Raya School para sa edukasyon at entrepreneurship. Si Rubilen Bingkay Amit na kilalang world-class billiards player para sa sports. Si Dr. Pia Bagamasbad na kasalukuyang direktor ng National Institute of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology sa UP Diliman para sa medicine at public health. Si Dr. Beverly Lorraine Ho na Director ng Health Promotions Bureau ng DOH para din sa Medicine at Public Health, si Dr. Erica Legara, Professor sa Asian Institute of Management or AIM at co-author ng National Artificial Intelligence Strategy Roadmap para sa Data Science, si Keisha Alena Mayuga para sa kontribusyon sa transportasyon bilang isang local urban planner, active mobility advocate, lead convener ng Life Cycles PH ng Save the Philippine Seas movement para sa marine ecology conservation, si Patricia Marie Pia Ranada ng Rappler for investigative journalism, si Georgina Romero para sa women empowerment through information and communications technology bilang founder ng Connected Women na isang social enterprise na nagtuturo ng mga digital skills at mga remote work competencies para sa mga kababaihan sa mga mahihirap at malalayong lugar. Si Dr. Aleta Iniguez para sa contribution niya sa marine science bilang isa sa mga faculty ng UP Marine Science Institute, kung saan marami sa kanyang mga pagsasaliksik ay nagamit para tugunan o paghandaan ang mga extraordinary events tulad ng mga harmful algae blooms na nakakasira sa ecosystems ng ating mga dagat. Napakainam po, Mr. President, sa unang araw ng muling pagbukas ng ating sesyon nakapaglaan tayo ng kaunting oras para kilalanin ang mga babaeng karapat-dapat parangalan. Pahapyaw man lang po natin binanggit ang kanilang mga nagawa at tagumpay para sa ikabubuti ng ating bansa. Kaya sana sa ating munting talumpati, maudyok ang sambayanan na lalong kilalanin ang 11 babae na binanggit dito at alamin ang kani-kanilang mga kwento. Dahil silang lahat po ay mga ehemplo na dapat tularan. Sila ay mga patibay na kahit sino ay maaaring maging mitsa ng pagbabago. Na basta't may tamang paninindigan at umaapaw na sipag at tiyaga, posible ang anumang reforma at pagbabago na kritikal ang ambag ng kababaihan sa bawat aspeto ng lipunan na hindi balakid ang kasarian para makapagserbisyo at makatulong sa sambayanan. Sana hindi lang mauwi sa simpleng paghanga ang ating parangal sa taong awardees ngayong araw, sana tunay na magsilbing inspirasyon ng mga awardees sa ating lahat para umaksyon at gamitin ang kakayahan at talento para sa ikabubuti at ikauunlad ng ating bansa. Ayon sa isang sinulat ng pinakaunang babae na Supreme Court Justice na si Justice Cecilia Muñoz Palma, woman was created for a nobler purpose than to simply admire and be admired. Kaya iwaksina po natin ang anumang pagmamaliit sa kababaihan. Palaganapin pa natin ang kaisipan na talagang napakalaki ang kanilang kontribusyon sa ating lipunan. Sama-sama natin silang parangalan ang 2022 Towns Awardees. Maraming pong salamat, Mr. President.
Senator Bong Revilla would like to insert just for the record speech. I move that it be inserted, Mr. President.
Yes, the motion is noted.
No, next to sponsor the measure is the distinguished lady from the city of Makati, the next mayor of Makati, Senator Nancy Binay. I move that she be recognized.
Our distinguished colleague from the city of Makati, Senator Nancy Binay, is recognized.
Mr. President, my esteemed colleagues, today I rise to sponsor Senate Resolution number 250, honoring and commending the 2022 Outstanding Women in the Nation's Service Awardees or Towns. Ang mga kababaihang kasama natin ngayon ay nagbigay ng mahalagang kontribusyon sa kanilang mga napiling adhikain. Nararapat lamang na sila ay ating parangalan at ipagmalaki dahil na rin sa kanilang paglilingkod sa ating bayan at sa ating mga kapwa Pilipino. They are an inspiration, especially to fellow women and young girls, showing us that it is possible to excel despite adversities and hardships. Nariyan si Teacher Annie Rosa Almario, isang children's books publisher at educator. Isa sa kanyang mga advokasya ay siguruhin na bukod sa literary merit ng mga akda, ay mailalathala ang mga kwento at napapanahong issue na dapat malaman ng mga bata. The progressive school teacher Annie Rosa, co-founded, is also known for instilling a sense of country and cultural pride to students. Nariyan din si Rubilin Amit, who is one of the best 10 ball players in the world, regardless of gender. A former world champion and a 10-time Southeast Asian Games gold medalist, ipinakita ni Rubilin na kaya nating mga kababaihan na makipagsabayan kahit kanino sa larangan ng bilyar. Dr. Pia Baga Masbad, meanwhile, is a key player in the country's pandemic response. Dr. Pia helped increase our country's testing capacity and also train medical technologists across the country on the proper use of RT-PCR tests. Si Asset Beverly Lorraine Ho ng Department of Health ay isa sa mga nanguna sa ating BIDA and RES bakuna informational campaigns noong kasagsagan ng pandemya. With this recognition of Dr. Beverly, we hope to encourage women to get into public health as a legitimate field apart from frontline clinical services. We also have Dr. Erica Legara, a physicist and an advocate of data-driven culture, a recipient of the Outstanding Young Scientist Award by the National Academy of Science and Technology. Dr. Erica pushes for data-driven science in policymaking to help future-proof our country. Another Pinay pride is Keisha Elena Mayuga, an urban planner and urban transport specialist who advocates for better public transport and safer bike infrastructure in Metro Manila. Keisha is also the founder of Life Cycles PH, which helped in providing bikes to frontliners at the height of the transportation problem during the pandemic. Si Ana Rosario Oposa naman ay kinilala dahil sa kanyang mga kontribusyon pagdating sa marine ecology conservation. Binuo ni Ana ang Save Philippine Seas movement na tumutulong sa pangangalaga ng marine biodiversity sa ating bansa. Nariyan din si Dr. Aleta Iniguez mula sa University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute na kinilala sa kanyang kontribusyon pagdating sa marine science. Dr. Aleta helped create tools to promote sustainable fisheries and made it accessible to small-scale fishers. She is also leading projects on developing early warning systems for harmful algal blooms in the country. Ms. Georgina Romero is the co-founder of a tech startup which provides online skills development and remote work opportunities for women. So far, Georgina's company has trained 40,000 women on entrepreneurship skills for the digital economy and is set to train 1,000 more women on skills in the artificial intelligence industry. Si Ana Patricia Non naman ay kinilala sa pag-organisa ng mga community pantry na nakapagbigay ng inspirasyon sa mga Pilipino na magtulungan noong kasagsagan ng lockdown sa bansa. From one community pantry in Maginhawa, Patreng moved our kababayans to give and help in different ways with at least 6,700 community pantries sprouting nationwide within weeks. And last but definitely not the least is Miss Patricia Marie Ranyada, a journalist who covers politics and the environment. Tricia has been recognized for her in-depth and investigative pieces and is an inspiration not only to women but to all media practitioners to continue to pursue the truth in their reporting. Each of these women are leaders in their own right, and it only shows that in every sphere of influence, a woman's voice is essential. Huwag sana kayong magsawa sa inyong serbisyo sa kapwa at sa bayan at naway patuloy kayong magbigay lakas lalong-lalo na sa mga kababaihan na hindi hadlang ang anumang balakid para makamtan ang minimithing hangarin. Mr. President, it is with utmost pride that I present to you the Outstanding Women in the Nation's Service 2022 awardees. Maraming salamat sa inyong mga kontribusyon sa lipunan at mabuhay ang mga kababaihan.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is a Towns awardee herself, our distinguished Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda. I move that she be recognized.
Our distinguished Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to associate myself with the sponsors of the measure and as one of the authors of the resolutions. I would like to thank our Majority Leader for referring it in due time so that it is made part of this sponsorship. Ako po ay nagbibigay pugay sa lahat ng kababaihan na siyang binibigyan ng parangal ngayong araw na to ng Senado. Nakikiisa po ako sa inyo, hindi ko na babanggitin isa-isa. Iba sa kanila ay kilala natin, iba nababasa natin ang kanilang trabaho. Ang nais ko ay makapagtrabaho kasama kayo sa iba't ibang aspeto ng ating buhay sa ating bansa. So once again, having been at Towns myself, maybe I should not name the year because it is much more than 20 years ago. It was in the early 90s. Perhaps some of the women being mentioned today or being awarded by the Towns were not yet born at the time. But I am told it was, okay, so it was 1995. But the year does not matter. What matters is the work that you do, and perhaps we could get together and see more how you could help us in terms of policy and how to improve the state of affairs in the country. So once again, congratulations to the 2022 Towns awardees from an old timer in Towns. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senate President Pro Temp Lauren Legarda. Next to co-sponsor the measure, Mr. President, is our distinguished Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros. I move
Our
that she be
distinguished
recognized.
Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. Sa kagandahang loob ng sponsor at co-sponsor ng mga resolusyong ito, I rise to co-sponsor proposed Senate Resolutions 250, 252, 283, and 312. Babanggitin ko ang ilan sa mga pinararangalan nating mga kabaro ko, Mr. President, before going to some general comments. Nais ko pong ipagdiwang ang paggawad ng Towns Awards at pagpaparangal ng Senado sa kanila, lalong-lalo na po kina Ani Rosa Almario na naging guro at tagapangasiwa ng paaralan ng aking bunsong anak. Si Ani na mula sa mga angkan ng mga tanyag sa larangan ng sining, ng sociology, at dahil sa kanyang life's work sa edukasyon din at sa pagpapalimbag ng mga aklat para sa ating mga bata at kabataang Filipino. Si Dr. Beverly Lorraine Ho, na kinikilala po, Mr. President, lalo na ng mga universal healthcare advocates tulad ni Sen. JV Ejercito at ng marami pang health reform advocates bilang isa sa pinakamahusay at may integridad na opisyal natin sa Department of Health. Si Ana Patricia Non, na isang nag-inspire sa ating buong bansa sa pinakamadidilim na taon ng pandemya na pakainin ang isa't isa, pakainin ang mga nagugutom at bigyang daan ang lahat, pati po yung mga nagugutom at mahihirap, na tulungan din ang kapwa Pilipino. Si Ana Patricia na sa kabila ng mga hamon na hinarap, pati ang infamous na red tagging, maging laban sa inosente at magiting na gawain ng mga community pantries. Si Ana Rosario Oposa na nagpapatuloy sa dakilang tradisyon ng kanilang angkan ng pag-alaga at giving back sa ating ekolohiya kay Inang Kalikasan. At si Patricia Maria Ranada na kasama po ni Pia Ranada, ipinagdiriwang ko ang kamakailan lamang tagumpay ng Rappler, kasama po ni Maria Reza na na-acquit po sa mga inihain sa kanilang mga tax evasion charges. At kasama po ni Pia Ranada, Mr. President, ay patuloy akong umaasa, humaharap ang ating bansa sa mas mahabang panahon ng malaya at defiant na pamamahayag. This I know for sure, Mr. President. When we tell stories of strong women, we celebrate the strength of all women. We celebrate all that women can do and all that women can be. I honor these fellow women who have stood strong in the face of tenacious attacks and rank misogyny. Women journalists, women in the medical and science and technology professions who have been our light during the dark times of our pandemic. Women environmentalists, women entrepreneurs, women community leaders. They show us that we do not need to ask to make space at the table for women. They have claimed these spaces and they claim them for all women. Kaya Mr. President, kasama po ng ating sponsor at co-sponsor, kasama ng ating buong institusyon ng Senado, ako po ay nagpapasalamat at nagpupugay sa ating ngayong taon, 2022, na mga ginawa ng Towns Awards. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished lady from the city of Taguig and Pateros, our good senator, Senator Pia Cayetano. I move that she be recognized.
Colleague from the city of Taguig and Pateros is recognized, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a short intervention. Mr. President, I join my colleagues in honoring the women present with us today and those who are not here, the Towns awardees. Mr. President, what I'd like to emphasize is this. When we showcase women who have achieved It is very common that we say that little girls will see them and know what their full potential can be. And this is the role that they now have because they are paving the way for young girls. But I had the chance of speaking to two of our jiu-jitsu international champions over here, and I told them, aside from inspiring the little girls, they are also inspiring the future of boys who mingle with these little girls. These boys will understand that women equally hold the fort. Women are equal partners. In fact, in many instances, and many of my dear colleagues here will admit that their partner is the better partner, doing the household, running the household, taking care of the children, and also working in whatever other career they have. That is the truth, Your Honor. And until men, and for that matter, young boys, are able to see that through women like this who pave the way, we will continue to have the struggle of inequality. And for that reason, I honor all of you because you show the world, both boys and girls, what women can achieve. Congratulations and thank you, dear colleagues, for taking the time to honor these women.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
President. Mr. President also would like to note that the sponsorship speech of Senator Lapid, Senator Jinggoy, and this representation be also inserted into the records.
We take
Thank
note
you.
of the manifestation.
Mr. President, at this juncture, move that we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Bicol, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, for his intervention and manifestation. So move, Mr. President.
The distinguished gentleman from Bicol and Republic of the Philippines, Senator Robin Hood Padilla is recognized. Kapatid.
Maraming salamat po, aming mahal na Ginoong Pangulo at sa ating pong pinunong mayorya. Hindi ko lang po kayang mapigilan ang aking sarili na hindi po makapagbigay ng suporta at sumali po sa napakagandang mungkahi na ito. At sapagkat alam niyo po, ngayong araw na ito, mahal na Pangulo, ang ating pong sineselebrate din ang kauna-unahang pagtatag ng unang Republika ng Pilipinas sa Malolos. At alam niyo po ay hindi po mangyayari ang unang Republika kung hindi dahil sa sakripisyo ng mga kababaihan. Nandiyan po ang ating Melchor Aquino, nandiyan po sila Gabriela Silang, sila Trinidad Rizal, nandiyan po si Gregorio de Jesus. Tunay po na naukit ang ating Republika dahil po sa mga kababaihan. At yan po ay napapatunayan hanggang sa ngayon dahil ngayon po ang pinakamatatapang dito sa Senado ay mga kababaihan pa rin. At talagang tayo po'y natatahimik kapag tumaas na po ang kanilang mga boses. At katunayan, ang akin pong pagtayo dito ay bilang una, pagpupugay po sa ating mga awardee. Mabuhay ang kababaihan. Ako po ay inyo talagang taga-suporta mula po sa aking lalong-lalo na sa puso. At higit sa lahat sa kaisipan at kaluluwa. Kaya ako po ay isinasali ko na po ang sarili ko po sa mungkahi na ito. Maraming salamat po, aming mahal na Pangulo at Pinunong Mayorya. Mabuhay ang kababaihan.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Senator Robin Hood Padilla. Mr. President, I will also take this opportunity as our good colleague mentioned about today's special occasion, Mr. President, which is the Araw ng Republikang Pilipino, Republic Act number 11014, which was passed into law in 2017, declaring today, January 23 of every year, as the first Philippine Republic Day, which shall be a special working holiday in the entire province. Ginoong Pangulo, atin din pong guniginita yung 124th na araw ng Republikang Pilipino, ang unang Republika ng Pilipinas na idinaos po at itinatag doon sa dakilang bayan ng Malolos, Bulacan noong January 23, 1899. Ito po yung naging dahilan kung bakit tinawag ang Pilipinas na duyan ng demokrasya sa silangan dahil tayo po ang unang republika sa Asia. So, Mr. President, the Malolos Republic was the culmination of the Philippine Revolution, which began with the Katipunan and led to the creation of the first constitution and republican government of Asia. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo. At this juncture, I move that we recognize, last but not the least, the distinguished gentleman from San Juan, our Deputy Majority Leader, no other than Senator J.V. Ejercito.
Our distinguished gentleman and colleague from the city of San Juan, Senator J.V. Arcito, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Likewise, I'd like to associate myself with the resolutions filed commending the outstanding women in the nation service or towns for 2022. Mr. President, I also observed that a lot of doctors are towns awardees this year, and I'd like to commend all of them for their service to the nation. But in particular, personally, Mr. President, I worked with Assistant Secretary Dr. Beverly Ho in the passage of the Universal Healthcare Act, and she was with us every step of the way. And also for the record that she is a TOYM awardee for 2022 and likewise a Towns awardee. So she was recognized for this. She was recognized for these two prestigious awards all in 1 year. So I'd like to thank her again. And likewise, I'd like to also remind, being a TOYM awardee myself, together with some of our colleagues in the Senate, like Senator Loren, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Cheese, Senator Riza, a lot of our TOYM awardees. It's not only that we are being awarded because we are good public servants, good mayors, good media practitioners, good doctors. We have to be extraordinary. So my challenge to all our towns awardees, continue serving the nation and continue to make a difference and continue to be extraordinary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, this is last but not the least. The distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, would also like to co-sponsor the measure. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
To the distinguished eligible
country in the never-ending task of nation building. These exceptional women undeniably carried out their extraordinary competence, dedication to serving our country, and desire to contribute to the development of our nation. Through the inspiring narratives and achievements that they have attained, I have faith that the next generation of Filipinas will follow in their footsteps. May I request that I will be likewise made as co-author and co-sponsor of this resolution. Mabuhay ang mga kababaihan, mabuhay ang Towns Awardee 2022.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Gatchalian. Mr. President, at this juncture, with the permission of the body, I move that all members of the Senate be made co-authors of this resolution. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion is approved. And before we act on the motion to approve the resolution, I'd like to also make special mention on Attorney Oposa's daughter, Ana Oposa, who's here today. We worked well together in my first term in the Save Our Seas projects. I was part of the Concerned Divers, CDP Concerned Divers of the Philippines, and we've been working ever since to save the oceans and our seas.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, and she was a TOYM awardee also last year. And to all the winners
Yes.
of today's, rather the Towns awardees are all well deserved.
Well deserved.
We congratulate them all.
Thank
So
you.
you can make the motion now.
Thank you, Mr. President. No other member wishes to interpolate or propose any amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 250, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolutions number 252, 283, 312, subject to style, Mr. President. 424, Mr. President, subject to style.
There being no objection, proposed Senate Resolution number 250, taking in consideration Senate Resolution number 252, 283, 312, and all the other resolutions thereafter is approved, subject to style.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would like to ask our awardees to come here in front at the podium, Mr. President, for a short picture taking. But also, Mr. President, we'd also like to honor, because we have with us today in the gallery our jiu-jitsu athletes, Kimberly Ann Custodio and Meggie Ochoa. We already adopted a resolution congratulating our beloved athletes and the rest of the Philippine Jiu-Jitsu team last December 14, 2022. On that note, Mr. President, may I also move for a minute suspension to present to Kimberly Ann Custodio and Maggie Ochoa our adopted resolution after the presentation.
Both, by the way, are women,
Yes, Mr. President.
women champions.
Talagang kakaiba ang ating mga kababaihan.
And our football team also, our football team,
Yes, Mr.
which will be
President.
going to the New Zealand, for the World Cup in New Zealand this coming summer. It's the first time we've ever had
Representative.
a team, a soccer team or football team play in the World Cup event. So we are being dominated this coming years by our women champions. So
Move for the previous question, Mr.
Yes.
President.
to allow our colleagues to have a photo opportunity with the guests and awardees, I move for a 1-minute suspension.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the privileged speech and recognize our distinguished Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Ligarda, to deliver her speech. So move, Mr. President.
Our Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, the Philippines is now the country with the highest disaster risk in the world. The World Risk Report 2022 assessed the level of exposure, susceptibility, and the lack of coping and adaptive capacities of countries from disaster and climate risks and hazards, and we came out as the most vulnerable. This is no longer new to us. Year after year, we have ranked high among the countries most at risk of disasters and climate change, a reminder of both our natural situation and our vulnerability. Mulat na tayo sa epekto nito sa Pilipino at sa ating ekonomiya. Napawalang saysay ang dekada-dekada nating aksyon upang maitaas ang antas ng buhay ng bawat pamilyang Pilipino at mapalago ang ekonomiya dahil sa matitinding bagyo, tagtuyot, pagbaha, pagguho ng lupa at iba pang mga delubyot sa kuna. Mula nitong Desyembre, may shear line na nagdulot ng baha sa Mindanao at hindi pa nga nakakabangon ay tuloy pa rin ang baha doon. Taon-taon, 506.1 billion pesos ang nawawala sa atin dahil sa mga sakunang ito. Katumbas na yan ang pinagsamang budget ng DOH at ng DSWD para sa 2023. Kung gaano man kalaking halaga ang matitipid kung tayo ay mas handa, ay maaari na sanang mailaan sa iba pang nating pangangailangan. Unfortunately, climate events are not single unrelated disasters. With each devastation, our vulnerabilities multiply, reverberating through all aspects of human life and biodiversity and bringing us closer to multiple ecosystem points of no return. These effects have a feedback loop that makes succeeding effects much worse. Whenever we assess damaged crops and infrastructure from disasters, we fail to take into account the damage to ecosystems. Ravaged forests and coral reefs have much reduced capacity to provide services such as water retention, flood prevention, cultivar sources, air filtration, carbon sequestration. Due to sea level rise each passing day, we risk losing our coastlines and entire islands. We will lose entire cities and townships along the coast if we do not succeed, resulting in chaos. This fact needs to be integral to all our planning. Way back in 2009, we passed the Climate Change Act. We followed it up in 2012 with the People's Survival Fund. Despite their best efforts reducing requirements and assisting in proposal development, the Climate Change Commission has only been able to approve 1/3 of the initial allocation from 11 years ago. This fund should not be a wasted opportunity. Now, on our nationally determined contributions, our country needs climate finance to build our defenses and safeguard every Filipino from climate impacts. But we also need climate finance to transition our economy and society towards low carbon development and growth, the kind that would mitigate global warming and the intensity of climate change. Thus, in 2021, the Philippines submitted our Nationally Determined Contribution, or NDC, conveying a 75% greenhouse gas emissions reduction and avoidance target by 2030 for agriculture, waste, industry, transport, and the energy sectors. Of this target, almost 3% is unconditional, or it will be undertaken using domestic resources. The rest is conditional, or will be implemented through support for technology development and transfer, capacity building, and climate finance by developed countries as mandated by the Paris Agreement. We have an ambitious NDC despite our negligible contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions. But we need to look at these commitments as investment plans, a massive opportunity for us to have the long view, to modernize our sectors and transform our society past the climate crisis. Consider how we could make our industries and households run on cheap and renewable energy and not on imported fossil fuels, or how we could reinvent our car-centric transport sector to deploy more inclusive, low-carbon public vehicles and mass transport systems, or how agriculture can thrive on natural fertility and microbiomes not reliant on imports. Think of a life without disposables and planned obsolescence, and of reversing the pollution they bring to us and the living environment. Think of the sustainable practices and products that could become economic opportunities in a changed world. Change is inevitable, and we have to use the momentum of how fast things are changing to ride that tide and chart the direction of our nation's future. Now, on COP27, just late last year, world leaders and country delegations spent 2 weeks in November discussing the implementation of the 2015 Paris Agreement to keep global warming from breaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels and providing support to vulnerable developing countries such as ours. It was already the 27th COP, Conference of Parties of the UNFCCC. While certain decisions or non-decisions are still lacking, the COP nevertheless made history as countries finally agreed to operationalize funding arrangements to address loss and damage. Finally, it took 30 years for the parties to the UNFCCC to reach this decision. As they say, better late than never. We can now hope that the details are fleshed out and our situation as most vulnerable will open the tap for funds to come in to help us recover and shift to climate resilient development. This loss and damage fund cannot bring back what we have lost in terms of lives, livelihoods, assets, opportunities, but just like the post-war reparation, this will help get us on an appropriate development track. Loss and damage are now enshrined as a third pillar of climate action, alongside mitigation and adaptation. I remember standing here 20 years ago, we would talk about mitigation, adaptation, now loss and damage. At COP27, the Philippines was also able to advance national interests by progressively phasing out subsidies for fossil fuels, promoting renewable energies, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, and non-market approaches to climate action. Our country also recently joined the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People, the commitment of the Department of Foreign Affairs, finally, and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, finally, in joining the HAC has set an aspiration of protecting at least 30% of the world's land and ocean through increased public and private financing to ensure long-term management and local governance and clear implementation mechanisms to nature so we can recover the ecosystems by the year 2030. This target was adopted by the Conference of Parties, another COP, in another critical convention, the Convention on Biodiversity, or CBD. In COP 15 of the CBD, state parties also agreed on major shifts in societies necessary to halt mass extinction. Mas pinapag-usapan ang COP ng UNFCCC kasing halaga po ang COP ng CBD. This is consistent with the United Nations declaration of this decade as one for ecological restoration. Lahat nakatugma sa dekadang ito po. Not surprisingly, 2030 is a target for reaching as well our sustainable development goals. And I'm glad that our colleague is on the floor, chair of the SDG committee. We have very little time. I urge this August chamber to think about these goals in every piece of legislation that we craft as we transition to survive and thrive past the climate crisis. On this note, I wish to thank Philippine delegations for both COPs, headed by Environment Secretary Loizaga, representatives from the DNR, CCC, DA, DFA, DOE, NEDA, civil society for relentlessly pushing for better targets and making developed nations deliver on their commitments. But while I commend the delegations, I also urge our leaders to make good on their climate pronouncements. We are way past the point when we can pay lip service to mitigation and adaptation and still avoid blame. We all carry the burden of a just energy transition, but we in government need not just to pave the way, but to show the way. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, our work in this battle against climate change, considered the greatest existential threat to all of humanity, continues. It is inextricably linked to the biodiversity crisis. There is no time to lose. And I want all of us, as legislators who pass laws, who conduct oversight, and allocate the budget, to embrace the critical role we play in this global climate emergency. Our work in the Senate and this 19th Congress will be a testament to our commitment to improving the lives of every Filipino and safeguarding our nation's future in light of the growing challenges amid this climate crisis. Buhay, kabuhayan, at kinabukasan ang nakataya. Hindi na pwedeng hindi kaya dahil kailangan. Mr. President, colleagues, the people have placed their utmost trust and confidence in all of us. Let us not waste this opportunity to do good, to do what is right, and in all our endeavors, imagine a different future past this twin crisis of climate and biodiversity collapse. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay.
Thank you very much, our Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Lorne Legarda. I'd like to recognize Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of the sponsor, Senate President Pro Temp, I would like to just make a few statements and maybe ask one or two questions.
Yes, of course, Mr. President, I would be happy to answer all questions.
Thank you. I'd like to commend our Senate President Pro Temp for once again bringing to light this situation brought about by climate change. And to go straight to the point, I'd like to make, how much does Her Honor believe in her expert opinion? And I have to say that she would be the expert here, Your Honor. She mentioned, let me give some background to my question first. She mentioned that there is 506.1 billion loss from climate change hazards, basically as a result of climate change. No, that's correct. Now I'm quoting from Her Honor's presentation, 506.1 billion. She also mentioned that the Philippines is now ranked the highest in the ranking of disaster risk based on the latest report. So my question is, for us to be ranked at the highest, no, to achieve that position, and then we have an amount here that we can try to visualize, no, 506 billion. Paano nangyari to? Is it, kasi Your Honor, Mr. Senate President, our colleague has in fairness been bringing this to our attention, been putting funding for this, to the point na kalabugin, let me use that word, yung members ng Climate Change Commission na wala dito nung budget hearing, So it's not for lack of her attention and also the inspiration that she gave the others na buo nga yung ating Climate Change Commission. Your Honor, that would be your law. If I'm not, yeah, that would be your law. And what year?
That was
Around,
2009,
okay,
but I filed it
earlier.
every year
So,
until it was.
So I'm just laying the basis that hindi naman tayo nagkulang sa Senate under her honor's leadership, no, to bring this to the attention of the whole country, to put funding into it. So when we end up getting ranked number 1 in this highest, the country, the Philippines is at the highest disaster risk. How much of that is brought about by our own doings? Kumbaga yung pagkukulang natin, and how much of that is sa hindi naman natin kasalanan, di ba? There are islands na hindi naman nila pinili, pero sila yung unang lulubog, di ba? May ganun eh.
First of all, Mr. President, we are only a 1/3 of 1% emitter in the world.
Yes,
But
yes.
yes, we are number 1 in vulnerability and world disaster risk.
Can you repeat
Now,
that? 1/3
We
of
are
1%.
8.3. So we are a 1/3 of 1% global greenhouse gas emitter in the world. Ang Pilipinas po ay isa sa pinaka mababa, ay 1/3 lang po ng 1% ng pagbuga ng greenhouse gas na sanhi po nitong lahat.
Okay.
Pero tayo po ay nararangko dati po ng top 3, top 5. Ngayon po, number 1 na po tayo sa world disaster risk. At sa bawat delubyo, sa bawat ulan, sa bawat isa sa 20 o higit pa po na bagyo ay ito
Kasama
po
tayo.
kumakain sa GDP po natin. Binanggit
Yes,
ko po
yes.
yung ating losses nga ay higit na sa 500 billion at ayon po sa Department of Finance ay 48.9 billion or 0.33% of GDP is lost yearly during the same period due to risks due to climate change. In short, tayo po ay vulnerable. So, tama kayo, hindi natin kasalanan, pero kaya nga ang ating advokasya ay hindi lang po mitigation, yung pagpabawas ng pagbubuga ng greenhouse gas emissions, kundi mas mahalaga siguro o kasing halaga ay adaptation. At tayo natutuwa na pinansin na po yung advokasya pa natin na loss and damage na yung mga bansang may kadahilanan ng mga
Ng greenhouse gas
nangyayari nito
emissions na
ay
to,
ngayon
sila
ay
ang bayad.
bigay na ng
Tama.
pondo. Pero yung adaptation, napakahalaga. Ano ba ho yung adaptation? Yung
Ma,
ating
before you go
pag-aakma-
into that, kasi kung ako, gusto ko yan maintindihan ng maayos, lalo na ho yung nakikinig sa atin. So bago ka pumunta dun sa adaptation, siguro iliwanag nyo pa yung loss and damage. Ang ibig sabihin nun sa pagkakaintindi ko, pero kayo na ho ang magpaliwanag, yung sabi nyo nga, okay, less than 1% ang kagagawa natin. And yet tayo ang number 1 na nakakaramdam ng effects ng climate change. So yung mga responsible for this, and we know that these are a lot of the developed countries, yung very industrialized countries, sila ngayon ang gusto nating magbayad, di ba?
Yes.
Ng damages. So pwede liwanag niyo yung concept na yun. Kasi, and then you go to the part na gusto niyong sabihin na, syempre may responsibility tayo. Bansa natin to, gumigising tayo araw-araw in our country, we have to adapt for our own preservation. But dun muna tayo dun sa, so what can we expect of them and what can we do as citizens, what can we do as legislators to be sure na yung may responsibility naman na yun, bayaran naman nila, pondohan naman nila, yung in effect tayo we carry that burden of their actions that damage the world, and tayo in the Philippines carry that burden.
Kaya nga po tayo ay nagratipika ng Paris Agreement. Nakasaad po sa isa sa mga probisyon ng Paris Agreement yung